Hi there, I just wanted to give you some quick tips on render times and motion blur. As I said in the tutorials often enough, I think you can quicken the preview time by setting the resolution to quarter. If you have a really slow computer, you can even go to custom and say maybe you want to have rendered every sixth pixel or even lower resolution. That will increase the preview time. If you have very short RAM preview, that it only renders a few frames, which can happen if you use the waves, which are very render intensive. You can also go to Edit, Preferences, Memory and Multiprocessing. And here you have a slider where you can extend the RAM preview. This might help you. And yeah, like I said before, I think it's best to apply the waves just before rendering and see if the wave's good in the wind and wave composition. Make here your settings for the waves, and if they are great, just turn this on right before you render, because for the preview it's taking quite long. I'm actually working on render times, and I hope I can improve these quickly, also the preview times. In the previous version 2, there are some After Effects versions had quite a problem, I think, with rendering, and it took a very long time. I figured out the problem. It was motion blur, even if it wasn't turned on. As you might know, here's the motion blur switch, and if you click it, all layers that are previously enabled for motion blur will now receive motion blur. But somehow on some machines, even if the switch wasn't turned on, it increased the render time dramatically. So I turned off the motion blur for these layers, or just the possibility that they can receive motion blur. So right now you can't, this will have no effect if you turn on motion blur. So if you want to have motion blur, if you have very quick movements like zooming in real fast, you have to unhide these layers by clicking this symbol. Then you see all the hidden layers. Here you can enable them for motion blur, like this. Now you can render with motion blur, but please be prepared for long render times. If you don't see these symbols, you might have to click here to be able to enable motion blur. You can also, if you want more motion blur, you can also go to Project, click on right click on 1080 main output, composition settings, go to Advanced, and here you have some settings for motion blur. If the shutter angle is set to 180. If you want more motion blur, you can increase this number. Also, this is the samples per frame, so for each frame it renders 16 frames between each frame. So this is the quality of the motion blur. If you want to increase this number, the motion blur will get better, but will increase the render time as well. Also, on one computer I tried the Photo Animator version 3. I found out that even with not using wind and waves, version 2 was a little faster in rendering. So if you're sure you don't want to add wind and waves to your composition, version 2 might be a little faster in render times on certain machines. That is why I've included version 2. That's just on motion blur and render times, and yeah, I hope it doesn't render too long for you. I'll try to improve it. Bye bye.